And you're a math professor, correct? Not a sociology professor?
I am a PhD in mathematics who's been studying the relevant academic literature full-time, 16 hours a day, most days of the week for the past 3 years. And we can talk about that briefly in a moment, but I want to talk about the bill itself first, as it's modeled after the executive order that President Trump issued in September. And it doesn't even technically ban critical race theory. It certainly doesn't ban the teaching of critical race theory. It certainly doesn't ban diversity or anti-racist or racial sensitivity training, and people should be clear about that. So it's not shutting down the ability to have diversity training or education or to cover these subjects in an academic manner in school. So it should be made clear. On the other hand, it does ban things that are central to the United States. It bans, or central to the opposite of them is central to the United States. It bans racial scapegoating. It bans racial stereotyping. It bans racial discrimination. It bans naming the country or state, in this case, as being intrinsically evil or racist or sexist. It bans the same things for sex and race. Racial scapegoating, sex scapegoating, racial stereotyping, sex stereotyping, and discrimination for both. These are not things that we really want to try to bring back into this country. We spent a long time getting away from them.
Now, I also do not have a PhD in math. I just want to admit that straight off, right? So I am at a disadvantage here. But if he spends 16 hours a day reading the academic literature, where the fuck does he get all this time to be on Twitter? He seems to be tweeting like 300 times a day.
16 hours a day, or full time, 16 hours a day, most days of the week for the past 3 years.
Maybe that gives us a sense, if he's tweeting the entire time while he's studying this stuff, how deeply he's actually read and understood the material.
Exactly.
He's got Twitter in one hand and like intros dummy to Hegel or whatever.
And then he's got the Twitter app and then the Safari app with the Wikipedia of Michel Foucault pulled up. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Hegel because I think this is not the most important way James Lindsay has had a bad effect on the world, but it is a small thing I find very annoying. Like, I just did this debate, I don't know, a couple months ago with Charlie Kirk, and there's a point where he said in the debate, like he said, so what do you think about, Karl Marx? And I started to say, like the stuff I thought that Marx was right about. And I said, I think his theory of history is basically right. He was like, oh, that's like Hegel's theory of history. And I said, no. Right, that's pretty different. And then like he spent like a minute arguing that it was like really important that I admit that like Marx's theory of history is basically the same thing as Hegel's theory of history. And I was wondering about that later. It's like, this is so random. Like shouldn't it be the other way around, that like the own on Hegel is that he leads to Marx, right? Like what? And then I realized, no, this is fucking James Lindsay because he's taught all the conservatives that Hegel is the root of all evil.
Yes. It's not philosophy. It's not critique of philosophy that he's doing. What he's doing is a demonology. And because he's a conservative and because conservatives are allergic to understanding things as structural, allergic to understanding some material basis. Oh, what's that right there?
This is a book that is making the same points that you're making right now.
Cool. Yeah. I love that book. That's my favorite new book now. But because conservatives are allergic to this sort of materialist explanation of things, they can't seriously confront first these ideas, or second why these ideas are in the world. Like, they couldn't have an imminent critique of it. So instead of trying to understand these ideas and how they might have arisen and affect society and how certain people are inspired by them, whether they match society or whether they don't, it's instead a demonology, because it's trying to find the bad ideas out there that the bad people have come up with, and it's laughable, really. But he's out there. He's saying this shit all the time, and millions of people are liking, retweeting, and reading and listening to him.
Yeah, if you go check out his page nowadays, like, he doesn't go more than like 14 minutes without a tweet. Like, it's really scary, because I have seen myself become more like that over the past year, and like, but the extent to which James Lindsay like is a professional tweeter is pretty insane. Yeah,
I don't believe that he's magically, tweeting 500 times a day and also reading for 16 hours a day. But I believe that he's probably spent a lot of time reading, but he's reading in the way that like somebody who believes that like aliens are sending him coded messages in the newspaper, and he needs to like find every fifth letter of every other line to decode the message.
I think it's I agree, and I think I would go one step further, which is that he's reading in order to get the answer that he's already decided, which is that wokeism and critical race theory, as they would call it, or as we would understand it, like critical pedagogy and like diversity and equity programs, are derivatives of Marxism. And so all you have to do is take those and find the lineage, go back into the genealogy in order to, with his dumb pseudoscientific brain, try to understand what the bad people are thinking. So he's found, he knows what he wants to argue. He has to read back 250 years of philosophy in order to figure out why he's right. And that's what he does.
It was really interesting, like my experiences, because I've done a lot of like, unpaid, completely, just I'm a psychopath, like just researching his Twitter and just like, okay, what does this dude actually think? Where does he get this idea that, and then I searched his critical race theory stuff over time, and he's been using the acronym CRT for 4 years now. And you watch his conception of whatever boogeyman he's talking about most recently evolve, because he posts screenshots of whatever he's reading, like the first time he reads it.
He posts a lot of Marxist.org.
He posts Marxist.org. He posts a lot of Herbert Marcuse from like different pages in one book, like not even consecutively, that don't at all say what it claims that they're saying. And like I've watched critical race theory go from, it's Michel Foucault's concept of power knowledge, and it's all this power knowledge stuff, and the grid, the grid, and that's a problem. And it's like they just see history so pessimistically. They think everyone's evil and it's all just about power. And it goes from that to Derrida deconstruction. You hear about that? You guys hear about deconstruction? Like words don't actually mean anything, and you could say whatever you want, and a critical race theorist will say, well, that's racist because I make the rules. Like just the most straw man things you can think of. And then it goes to, Derek Bell. Oh, yeah, Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw. She used the term postmodernism in a footnote. And then I'm going to make a thesis that I'm going to write a book with that thesis. And it'll become like the number one philosophy Amazon section book, Cynical Theories, right?
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.